once I discovered that there really was something going on with the technology, I began to question whether or not the whole story of alien abductions and that kind of thing was even possible, that maybe what people have been seeing all these years was just some really highly classified hardware that was being operated by the U.S. military. So when I had the opportunity to cultivate friendships with people who were claiming that they had been abducted by aliens, I looked at this as yet another opportunity to find out if these people were really experiencing this kind of phenomenon, or whether it was just people were hungering for personal attention. And it turned out that the phenomenon was as real as a heart attack. I did cultivate a friendship with one particular group of individuals, and received an invitation to be in their home overnight when such an encounter was anticipated. And the reason that this individual was able to make such a prediction was because she had an implant in her ear, behind her eardrum, that you could actually physically see through the eardrum. Most people don't know this, but the eardrum is such a thin membrane, you can actually look right through the eardrum and see parts of the inner ear. And you could see this implant behind her eardrum with a professional quality otoscope. And this thing would go off, as she put it, about 24 hours before one of these encounters was supposed to happen. And so she let me know that on the 13th of the night of the 11th of December, 1989, into the morning of the 12th of December, that there would be some kind of an encounter. So I went over, took my camera, infrared film, and some other equipment to detect magnetic anomalies and this kind of thing. And she and I and her roommate sat up all night drinking caffeinated beverages to try and stay awake, and nothing happened. And then I basically plopped down on the couch in the living room. She and her roommate went back to their area to sleep because they had to go to work the next day. And being that it was December, of course, it's still dark at 7 o'clock in the morning. And at about 10 minutes to 7, all the dogs in the neighborhood started howling, and I mean howling as though they were being tortured. And lasted for exactly 90 seconds, and then they all stopped simultaneously. It was very spooky. And when that phenomenon ceased, I suddenly found myself fully awake and yet completely paralyzed, unable to move. I could still see my watch. I could see the passage of time. I could move my eyes around. And momentarily I almost started to panic, and then I remembered something my football coach had said back in school, that if you ever think you've been hit and that your spinal cord's damaged, you're paralyzed or something, just try and wiggle your toes. And if you can wiggle your toes, you're probably okay. It's just, you're stunned or temporarily, incapacitated. So I could wiggle my toes. I knew it was okay. So I devised a plan to get out of this situation, sort of, to roll myself off the couch, as it were. And I was in the process of doing that to try and break free from this restraint, whatever it was, when I was suddenly rendered unconscious in an instant. And the best way to describe that moment in time was if you were to take your clenched fist and press it against your temple and then abruptly apply some pressure so your knuckles pop. That was the sound that I heard in the middle of my head as I passed out. Woke up again a minute later. According to my watch, only a minute of time had passed. And from that point on, I was unable to even conceive of the possibility of trying to get out of this restraint, whatever kind of restraint it was. Somewhere way in the back of my mind was this quiet little voice who was saying, "Everything's okay. Don't be afraid. This is not for you. It'll be over soon." And that went on for an hour. And so at 10 minutes to 8, all the dogs in the neighborhood started howling again. It lasted exactly 90 seconds, just like the first time. And then suddenly I could move again. And the young lady came running out of her room and said, "Look at all the clocks." And I said, "Yeah, it's 10 minutes to 8, just like my watch." She says, No. She says, "The actual time is 10 minutes to 9. We've lost an hour of time." I'd never experienced anything like that before in my life. And I I couldn't tell you whether I'd had any kind of personal face-to-face with some off-world entity. I don't really know, but one of the strange byproducts of that encounter was that she described, she's one of the few individuals that I know of that had the ability within a day or two of being able to recall what had happened during the encounter. A lot of people are not able to do that without some sort of hypnotic regression. But she said that during the first cycle where this howling of the dogs began, there was a kind of portal that opened up in her room, and out of this sort of a tunnel where everything that you would visually see in the bedroom, the chest of drawers, the wall, the windows, everything just sort of stretched like it was a big piece of elastic back into a tube. And that tube became like a tunnel, and then the tunnel opened up, and in walk a pair of these 4-foot-tall gray aliens with the big eyes, the big heads, and the whole 9 yards. And so she was telepathically beckoned to face them, and they proceeded to show her 4 major cataclysms that would happen in the coming years. And they said that before or after these 4 events happened, that there would be a mass landing of off-world ships in the high desert of California. Now, she went on to describe the 4 events. She didn't know specifically what the date was, but she knew what the chronology was. And she said the first event involved she said, I could see a major metropolitan area. There were all these skyscrapers. There were these 2 big buildings. They first, one after the other, caught on fire, and then a little while later, one building collapsed, and then the second building collapsed, and there was a huge pile of dust and debris. So that was obviously 9/11. She said the second event she saw was somewhere in the southwestern Pacific. She saw what looked like a fault on the ocean floor, and she saw the 2 sections on either side of this fault line shift. One lifted up, the other one dropped, and then they moved sideways a little bit. And then she saw a massive tsunami, and she said hundreds of thousands of people will die. And, of course, that was December 27th, 2004, I believe, in Banda Aceh, Indonesia. She said the next incident she saw, and she indicated that it would be at or above 9.0 on the Richter scale, which it actually happened to be. She said the next incident would be an earthquake of some kind off the coast of Japan. She said it would also be on the seafloor, but she said this one's going to be a lot worse for some reason, but she couldn't say exactly why it was going to be worse. She, of course, didn't know about the reactors blowing up at Fukushima Daiichi. But she said the last incident would be a major earthquake in California that would start with a series or a swarm of quakes near the Salton Sea, which has already started, by the way. And that this quake, the one that would trigger this major event, would be about 9.0 also, and that it would cause a chain reaction of quakes to ripple up the entire San Andreas Fault, and it would level San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco over the course of several hours or days, that it would be the greatest single loss of human life to a natural disaster in history. It would be damages in excess of trillions of dollars, and that it could probably cause a collapse of the California economy. So that has not happened yet. But the earthquakes near the Salton Sea have within the last 2 years have been picking up. So it's something I'm very concerned about. But I live way up in the northern half of the state, so we don't really feel too much of that kind of activity